Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:06. It's O'Connor and Company. I'm so glad you're letting us ride along with you. Riding shotgun on wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. Is it me, Mercedes Schlapp, or is it sort of already kind of the holiday season? The winning an election gives you that feeling, doesn't it?
So you know Melissa, my sister,
Yes.
who is your BFF.
She's kind of hot for me.
She already was texting me. She's like, what sides are we making for Thanksgiving? Like, everyone's already checking out. Like, she was on a conference call last night, and I called her, and I was like, hey, Mel. She's like, I'm on this conference call. She was so tired.
Not us. We still got work to do here.
We have work to do.
It's 6:35. James Robbins, as the world is burning around us. Biden bringing us into World War III. James Robbins will make it make sense. 7:05, Representative Andy Biggs on those missing undocumented children. 7:35, Dina Griffiths, Loudoun County School Board. 8:05, KT McFarland. And then at 8:35, Virginia Attorney General J.C. Maris. That's Mercedes Schlapp. I am Larry O'Connor. And yesterday in Georgia, justice.
In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty.
And it went on and on. Guilty of all charges. The illegal immigrant who was allowed into the country, catch and release, despite the track record and criminal record, by the Biden-Harris administration, transported then up to New York. Then we paid for him to be transported down to the scene of the crime. And then, of course, the tragic and brutal murder of Laken Riley. Laken's mother, Allison Phillips, in the courtroom.
Your Honor, on February 22nd of 2024, our family and friends were given a life sentence without a chance of parole. Jose Ibarra took no pity on my scared, panicked, and struggling child. There is no end to the pain, suffering, and loss that we have experienced or will continue to endure. On that horrific day, my precious daughter was attacked, beaten, and shown no mercy. She fought for her life and dignity and to save herself from being brutally raped. This sick, twisted, and evil coward showed no regard for Laken or human life. We are asking that same be done to him.
Now, the death penalty was taken off the option list for the judge by the district attorney down there, who, by the way, it should be pointed out, is a Democrat and a Biden-Harris supporter. Speaking of Joe Biden, let's not forget that at the State of the Union earlier this year, when challenged by Marjorie Taylor Greene, also of Georgia, to even say Laken Riley's name, President Biden said this.
I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals?
There you go. Couldn't even say her name properly and then just tried to equivocate this murder. Oh, sure, she's dead. But what about all the people who were killed by citizens who were here legally? What a sad and horrible, but it's a perfect representation of everything that is wrong with this administration how we're turning the page from it.
But the Biden and Harris administration, they have blood on their hands. They have allowed for these illegal immigrants, these criminals, because criminals. I mean, we know that Jose Ibarra was part of the Tren de Aragua, which is the Venezuelan criminal network that has penetrated this country, that is in about 16 states right now. And this is not just only happening, you know, in places like Georgia. We just saw, for example, a case in Fairfax County. I mean, it's in our backyard of these illegal immigrants committing these crimes, living in these areas of Virginia and Washington, D.C. It has to be top one priority to basically smoke out these criminals, get them out of our countries, and make sure they never, ever come back.
Yeah, you're right. It's in Fairfax County, a Virginia sanctuary county, by the way, where another illegal immigrant was just arrested yesterday for multiple rapes on American women who were running on a hiking trail. By the way, Fairfax County also with strict gun control provisions that prevent women from being able to conceal carry and protect themselves. So,
right,
and you keep continuing to elect the leadership in that county. Also, circling back to Joe Biden at the State of the Union, as you just heard, equivocating the violent death of Laken Riley. The real problem with this entire story and Joe Biden's participation in it apparently is that he used the term illegal. That he had to apologize for.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
So he just showed more remorse and concern and bent over backwards to apologize for using the term illegal instead of undocumented than he ever showed remorse for the actual murder of Laken Riley.
Yeah,
and
he
Jonathan,
should have not even said he should have said murder. He
Right.
should have said criminal. He should have said this man should have never been here. Laken Riley should have never died. And yet he comes across because the Democrats have to obviously change our language constantly and basically tell us what we can and cannot say. It just shows how out of touch, how they are so not connected to the American people in any way. Laken Riley should have never died. You've seen these cases across the country of women, of mothers, of girls being killed in the hands of these illegal immigrants. I mean, it's, to me, if there's one thing that really, I think, destroyed Harris's campaign is the fact that they have allowed for criminals to roam our communities and really, just be part of these really gruesome crimes.
And when we bring up the issue, they behave as though we're the problem because we use the term illegal immigrant. Like, it's like they get angry about the language police aspect of this instead of the actual crime, the real crime that ends up with an innocent woman murdered.
And then you have these mayors and governors saying, "Oh, we're not going to help the Trump administration with this deportation plan." So they're already saying, well, because the residents are scared. It's like, no, hand over the criminals now. That is what the American people want. They want the criminals out of our country. We know that Trump has said with this deportation plan, it's going to be about, getting rid of these criminals.
All the compassion, all of the concern, all of the tears are for the people who are in the country illegally and who have become part of the policies that have allowed this murderer to do what he did to this innocent woman. Well, last night on Fox News, Tom Homan, the incoming border czar under Donald Trump, he had tears of his own, rightfully, for the victim here.
Laura, a lot of people ask me why I get so emotional when I do Fox News and why I scream at members of Congress. Because I've seen so much tragedy. I've talked to hundreds of angels and moms and dads who buried their children because they're killed by illegal alien. This is the latest. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by members of cartel. When you look in her eyes and everything innocent and pure has been ripped from her soul, and her life will never be the same. I mean, it's just, I'm tired of it. And
he was literally on the brink of tears. All right, we've got some more on this, but I just want you to hear that, and I want you to know that we on the right who want to enforce our laws and protect innocent Americans and actually follow the immigration and border security laws that are on the books right now and stop violating those laws as the left and Democrats would want us to do. We are accused of not being compassionate. We are accused of not showing love and concern for our fellow man and for our neighbors. I'm sorry. Unless you are standing up and protecting the innocent people who are victims of crime because of these policies, you are the ones who have no compassion, and I will not take a backseat to you on that measure. It's 6:50. So that was justice in Georgia, such as it is, with the conviction and life sentencing of the murderer of Laken Riley. Meanwhile, yesterday on Capitol Hill, a congressional hearing over the 300,000+, upwards to 400,000 children who have been lost in this country. Illegal immigrant children who have been handed over to God knows who, and they are now doing God knows what. Again, the compassionate crowd who says that compassion and empathy and love for your fellow man is what drives their broken immigration and broken border security policies. Their compassion has now led to upwards to 400,000 missing and exploited children in this country. Congressman Chip Roy asking Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra about just this.
Do the full criminal history checks for the potential sponsors of these children?
Well, yes, we follow best practices.
Right. The answer is no.
It's a yes, we follow child welfare best practices.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is, do you do background checks, the full criminal records, public background checks for the FBI National Criminal History?
We certainly check for criminal records. We check for a sex offender in the sex offender registry.
Answer the question.
We do, again, the different things that
the rule I'm talking about says you do not.
I'm sorry?
The rule that we're talking about that was released on April 30th, 2024 says you do not.
We do not what?
That you do not carry out FBI National Criminal History checks for all potential sponsors.
We do background checks on every individual.
Right, but that's a slippery description. What I'm saying is this rule is pretty clear in what it's saying, that you do not provide the kind of background checks, which, by the way, has created the problems.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm told that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not qualified to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That's your current Secretary of Health and Human Services, whom these children's care was promised to. I get really upset about this, Mercedes, and I know you do too, especially you're of Latina descent. So we're told that if you speak out and try, it's Latin and Hispanic children who are being exploited here.
Well, I mean, it's why, we've already we celebrated our 1-year anniversary of this of founding, and I'm very proud to be part of that, of leading that effort of the CPAC Center for Combating Human Trafficking. It's very personal to us, and you understand this. I mean, you have 2 daughters. I mean, I have 5 daughters. Yeah. The average age of a child being sex trafficked is 11 years old. And Americans are the biggest consumers of this industry, of this sex trafficking industry. They have used our porous borders to bring these children in, over 300,000 children coming in, where we have or 400,000 children coming. We have no idea where they are. And the HHS secretary, it is their responsibility to know exactly where these children are, to figure out who, quote unquote, are their sponsors. And they're not vetting these sponsors. They're not doing DNA testing at the border to figure out if the person with them is the parent with that child. And it is literally, I think, one of the biggest humanitarian tragedies of our lifetime. And this government has been part of this sex trafficking ring like we've never seen. Yeah. They have it's been a blind eye. They don't even focus on it. They don't even make it into, let's do a war against human traffickers. Yeah. That's what they should push for.
But they're upset if you call them illegal immigrants instead of undocumented workers. Seriously, that's what their priority is. Congressman Roy continued with Becerra yesterday after reaching the conclusion that no, they are not doing full FBI background checks on these so-called sponsors these children are handed off to. Okay, well then what happens to these children?
And before Mrs. Hamilton's tragic death, HHS released him to a sponsor in May of 2022. Despite Martinez having gang tattoos and an arrest record for illicit association with MS-13. Mr. Secretary, how can you credibly claim that HHS is working to protect these children? And by the way, children we're talking about in the order of magnitude of 400 and something thousand children, which you are dismissing that they are lost. Let me ask you a very specific question, Mr. Secretary. Can you account for the whereabouts of those 400 and something thousand children? The 320,000 that were put in the report by the Inspector General, the 85,000 that we've talked about before in 2023. Do you know where all of these children are and that they are safe? Yes or no?
Congressman, as I explained the process, we get these kids when they are referred to us by the Department of Homeland Security. We then provide them with care while they are in our custody. We lose custody of those kids once we find a vetted sponsor with whom they can stay.
A vetted sponsor that rapes and murders the people that they're entrusted to because you issue a rule that doesn't even do the background check?
And the answer is yes.
Wow.
That's exactly it. As soon as they hand them off to this unvetted and unchecked and unqualified so-called sponsor, then they cut ties and they no longer have any contact. And now Tom Homan has said that it's going to be a top priority for them to go after and try to find these children. And I literally pray to God that he's able to do that. This new administration can't start soon enough, and your prayers are needed. It's 6:23.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks so much for tuning in here on a busy Thursday morning. We're going to get right to it here at 7:05. Representative Andy Biggs. Now, he was in that hearing yesterday trying to get to the bottom of these missing children, and Congressman Biggs out of Arizona obviously is deeply concerned about this issue as well. So we'll get to him at 7:05. Coming up at 7:35, Dina Griffiths, more drama coming out of Loudoun County. She's a member of the school board there, and apparently there was some sort of altercation that she was involved with well, we'll get the details from Dina Griffiths. Then coming up at 8:05, KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump. We're going to ask her about these latest moves from Putin, from Ukraine, and most importantly, whether this is all instigated by the Biden administration as we woke up this morning with an intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Ukraine from Russia. And then coming up at 8:35, we've got the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. That's a whole lot to get to, Mercedes Schlapp. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Have you been reading all the things you need to know before you conduct a professional radio program?
Are you serious? Are you really asking me that question? You know, Larry, I just follow your lead. I've learned from the best.
We are so.
I'm just going to step back and prepare my side dishes for Thanksgiving while you masterfully do all these interviews.
Have you ever heard the term blind leading the blind?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure. That's what we're going to rebrand the show whenever Mercedes is here on Thursdays, blind leading. You fill a vital role here on the program. You demonstrate exactly how important Julie Gunlock and Patrice Onwuka are to this operation. Because when you're here, everything falls apart.
Where are you going with this?
Well, I'm just saying. When you're here, everything falls apart.
Oh, thanks. Really? That's a vote of confidence.
Degenerates into two pals having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go back to where we started here with the Biden administration and the final throes of their failed presidency. It was just a week ago, less than, that the Biden administration granted permission to Ukraine to shoot medium-range missiles into Russian territory to damage targets there in their ongoing war. Now, this conflict has been going on since, well, really after the first year of the Biden administration is when Russia made its incursion against the Ukrainian border.
Right.
So this is 3 years now this war has been going on. We have been funding, we have been supplying, we have been delivering, we have been giving Ukraine almost everything that they ask for, basically. Certainly Joe Biden's gotten everything he has ever asked for every time any sort of spending provision comes up in Congress. Also, it should be noted that there has never been a standalone, clean, up or down vote just about Ukraine. Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, and the powers that be over on Capitol Hill have always enveloped Ukraine spending and escalation in Ukraine aid with something else, like hurricane relief in Florida or some other issue that needs to be solved or resolved. So,
Well, let's start by saying that, we know that President Putin has already shared his opinion that he is willing to broker a peace deal when Donald Trump is in power.
Post-election, yeah.
And Zelensky
a week after the election, they both said, okay, well, we're going to have to work on a peace deal.
And Zelensky said the same thing. So, look, they know there's a new sheriff in town coming, but this is obviously because there's this vacuum of leadership within the United States right now, because Joe Biden, barely.
Oh, I think it's worse than a vacuum of leadership, Mercedes.
Down a pathway.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage. They're taking advantage to escalate this war in Russia and Ukraine.
Sadly, I don't think it's just Russia or Ukraine that's taking advantage. Let me say again, they've gotten everything they wanted, Ukraine has, and the Biden administration has gotten everything they've wanted from Congress, right? So now, after the election, after their policies have been rejected by the American people, and as you said, Zelensky and Putin have both said, well, it looks like in the next administration next year we're going to work out a peace deal. Now, the Biden administration says, hey, Ukraine, go ahead and shoot missiles into Russia and deeper into their territory, and gave them permission to do so. Putin says, hey, if they do that, then we're going to put the use of nuclear weapons on the table. We're not going to preclude ourselves from using that. Next thing you know, Russia this morning launches this missile launch into the into Ukrainian territory.
Interballistic missiles into
that's right,
into that territory.
And
First time.
So I mean, again, I have to ask. You said that the Biden administration is basically, on its heels and there's no leadership. Well, no, somebody's leading. Somebody is escalating this. Somebody, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Kamala Harris. I'd love to know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because this administration should be acting as though there's no leadership because, frankly, their job right now is to pack boxes and move the hell out. But instead, they have now deliberately made decisions that has escalated this war when they're in a position not to do a damn thing about it.
Because Ukraine used American missiles and obviously British missiles to hit Russia, to strike targets within Moscow this past week. And so, it just gets to the point that it just shows that they're gonna go rogue as long as the U.S. doesn't say you got to stop these actions right now.
Well, but they wouldn't have done this.
Who is approving this? Right?
They wouldn't have done this without the Biden administration's approval. Ukraine would not have done this. So I think that's worth investigating, don't you? And here's the other problem that I have with this, and we're going to talk to KT McFarland at 8:05 to get the details on it. But when this sort of policy change, and this was a policy change, after the election, the Biden administration changed policy very quietly and allowed Ukraine to use these longer-range missiles deeper into Russia's territory. They weren't allowed to do it up until now because everybody knew that that would be a sign that our weapons being used by our ally against Russia would be an escalation in this, and we would be, Russia would rightly interpret that as us escalating this through Ukraine. The fact that no one from the Biden administration has had any public statement saying, we have spoken with President-elect Trump, we have spoken to his transition team, they are being briefed on a regular basis, we are all on the same page, nothing. I'm told that we're going to have a peaceful transfer of power. I was told that this was going to be a really, hand-in-glove kind of transition. This is not how you do a peaceful transfer of power. This is not how you do a smooth transition. The Biden administration is purposely creating a warlike footing over in Eastern Europe that the Trump administration is going to have to clean up.
Not only do you have that, but then you're talking about a migrant caravan that's coming from Latin America, that too being a huge issue.
Yeah.
As they know that this is their final chance of getting in here before the huge crackdown.
You're right. And
it just shows you they're not going to stop. The rogue players are not going to stop until Joe Biden's out of office.
Well, and by rogue players, let's be clear, rogue players in this administration, in Washington. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll talk to Andy Biggs, by the way, at 7:05 about that migrant caravan. We're going to talk to KT McFarland at 8:05 about the hostilities in Russia and Ukraine. It is now 6:44.
Making sense of your world.
I can't believe this. News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
And I am so with you. Making sense of the news.
Hey, Mercedes, all those celebrities who promised to leave the country if Trump won the election?
Yes. How's it going?
And then they never do.
Yeah.
Well, we have good news. One of them did. Actually,
who did?
Actually, one of them did with their celebrity wife. Both of them are gone. And no, it's not Alec Baldwin and his Latina wife from Boston, sadly. It's Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi. Portia de Rossi hasn't done much in Hollywood in a long time.
I know, but she's so gorgeous. I don't know why she's with Ellen out of all people, for crying out loud.
I mean, yeah. Anyway,
so they've moved to England.
They have moved to England of all places. Well, she is Portia de Rossi is Australian, so I guess she has Commonwealth citizenship going there, and maybe Ellen will become a member of the King's court or something like that. But they're gone.
Yeah,
They've
what,
gone to
like a
England.
knight or something? Don't they be? Aren't they
Well,
knighted?
it would be a lady, a dame.
Well,
There is nothing like a dame.
Yeah,
nothing in the world.
Well, look, I think it's great if they want to leave. Look, they have the money to leave. They literally obviously don't care in investing in America, and it's just they're so pathetic. They're such sore losers. Like we suck it up, and when Harris,
yeah, they're selling their mansion in Montecito, California. By the way, I wonder, so if they live in Montecito, you know who else lives in Montecito?
Can they take Prince Harry with them?
Well, I was going to
too?
say, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle live in Montecito. I wonder if they're the ones who gave them the idea. Maybe they're going there as some sort of like espionage plan, and they're
But
there
like,
to
what I
spy.
don't understand, Larry, they live in California, for crying out loud. I mean, it is kind of like, like not really living in America, to say the least.
Ellen DeGeneres is 66 years old. She's largely stepped away from the spotlight in recent years when her daytime television show ended after 19 seasons. That came after reports from employees that she had created a toxic work environment. She was a monster to work for. Ellen DeGeneres has apologized publicly, saying that we've made the necessary changes and we're starting a new chapter, but then the show was canceled. She says that they're moving to England and they're never coming back because of Donald Trump's victory over Kamala Harris. Ellen DeGeneres endorsed Kamala Harris, by the way. So listen, say what you... I do find it fascinating. One of the knocks that they have against Donald Trump is that he's, everyone in the world hates him, that he's so rude and offensive to all these third world countries like Haiti and to, Muslim nations and to South America and Nicaragua. How come they don't move to those countries when they leave here? They're going to England. Right? They're going to England. Listen,
England.
You want a virtue signal because Trump's such a monster. Why don't you move to Haiti? Why don't you move to Guatemala? Why don't you move to all those countries that you're so worried are going to be offended by Trump as president? But no, they're going to be well protected in England. They're going to be treated like royalty.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous now happening in England. That's for sure.
It's 6:52.
Making sense of your world.
Talk radio is where I get all of my information.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense